been following it very closely,
I've been
but
following in there.
we have a very severe situation going on in Canada where a bunch of people peacefully protested some of the mandates and the restrictions that are in place. So the Canadian government said, hold my Tim Hortons, right? They handed their coffee off and kicked everything up a notch. And the government, you can blame the government for the pure escalation they've done. Like, not one thing that they've done in this situation has been a de-escalation measure.
Yeah.
Everything has been like, let's kick it up a notch, let's go harder. You know, if we take their dogs and we freeze their bank accounts and we steal their food and we, you know, take their children away from them, then people will finally listen and do what we say. And it sounds dramatic, but that is literally the point we're at, you know? Saturday alone, you know, we saw that the police chief there said, oh, it doesn't matter if you stop protesting, we are still going to bring the full force of the federal government down on you because you are now a terrorist. And it's just like, whoa, okay. Time to step back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, what are other things that, like, I'm not super familiar with how Canada's government is set up, but I do know, like, a lot of things people are saying, like, well, it's their right, but, like, they don't have, like, freedom of speech like we do here in the U.S.
Yeah, they don't have the Bill of Rights, but they do have a constitutional. They are a constitutional republic, just like the United States. And in their constitution, they do have a right to protest. So,
but I guess
that is.
Mm-hmm. I was
that's the reason that Trudeau had to enact wartime measures, just so that he can quell the protests, because by law there was no other way, because they were legally protesting.
Well, I mean, I guess at this point the question is, what kind of protest is okay? Because, I mean, they blocked off bridges and roads, which was really hampering production of vehicles, transportation of foods, and other things that are very essential to the lives of other Canadians. Like, just speaking,
millions of dollars lost.
Yeah, speaking on behalf as devil's advocate, like, I can see where the concern is, but at the same time, like, you don't
that
just
approach
start...
is just bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can agree with you. We can all agree. But the problem with this particular situation is Trudeau, the Prime Minister, encouraged these types of protests in 2020 when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on. And he actually went down, joined them while they were blocking streets and in protesting in downtown and all that. He was one of the first people to go down and join in and, you know, show support. And at the end of the day, yeah, these people were making life hard because the government's making their life hard. And in turn, and it sounds mean, but the people who voted for the government are the citizens that live there. So in turn, you're the ones making the truckers' life hard. So, I mean, the truckers made your life hard. It doesn't give you a right to, you know, come in and with police and horses and tear gas and, you know, attack people who are sitting in their truck. That is the extent of the protest.
I think, like, I when I see the situation, the reason why they're protesting, like, I have to take a step back and think about it in a different context. Like, take away the reason why and just look at the facts of what it is. And I feel like it is a double standard because, like, when we had in the summer of 2020, all those protests, I supported those protests. Like, you are allowed to say, I don't like this about my government and I want this to change. And if I have to do this to get your attention, I'm going to do it. And it's the same thing I feel for these truckers. Like, they have a right to do that and get their concerns across if no other avenue has worked for them. Like, at the end of the day, like, their government, the way they approached it with tear gas and, you know, calling them terrorists and other things, like, these are citizens and constituents that are voicing their opinion. And you are choosing to meet them with force is only going to lead to like more problems. Like it's not a peaceful approach at all. And for it to get here already, like what were you not doing for it to get there?
So, I mean, and that's, I've learned a lot about the Canadian government in the process, right? So they have a parliament is their main body. And when parliament's in session, like through this process, the prime minister has to be there in parliament and the parliament members yell at him, they yell back. Like it's very different than what we're used to, right? Where our executive branch is completely separate. Well, there it's kind of, a gray area, and it just you can see like the current administration, the Liberal administration in Canada, is actually the minority. Like it's there when they run for a prime minister, there's roughly 5 different parties that run at a time. So when you get 20% here, 20% here, 20% here, 19 here, and 21%. Justin Trudeau was the 21% when he won his election, right? Like that's how it worked out. Not like that exact way, but in theory, that's how it worked out. So, in response to this, though, what we see down here, and especially in the news organizations, we see the protest has stopped and everybody went home and all this. It hasn't. It's grown. Like everything that the government has done to attack the protesters has only made the protesters grow. Like their numbers are bigger now. It's just they don't have trucks in downtown Ottawa. So that's all they're going to show.
So
yeah. I say I sent y'all a video of one of the protests. It wasn't the protest itself, but it was the little kid dancing. Like that's what they did when they were sitting on the roadways. Somebody ended up getting a stage. They started having a little party just by themselves. I think people eventually got through the line, but like they weren't.
So I out of curiosity, what's the difference between the BLM protest in 2020 and this protest? Like what are they the same thing? Is it like they're blocking roads, or is it a march?
If we want to put it like in side to side comparisons, in the 2020 protests there was a whole lot of looting, a lot of vandalism, and a lot of assaults and stuff. Here, I think we've had like 4 or 5 reported cases. Like that was it. It was mainly people having a party in the middle of the street. And it wasn't. So like you can go watch the videos. There's people like they're shoveling the sidewalk. So because they're Canadians, right? So if their truck was blocking the street, the truck drivers would get out and shovel the sidewalk so people could get around. Like they brought stages in the middle of the street. Yeah. And they were just all in the middle of the street playing music, drinking coffee, having a good old time. Like there was no violence that we really saw. And yeah, there was 1 or 2 bad actors, but that's everywhere, right? Like we haven't seen.
The same thing happened during the Black Lives Matter protests. Like we saw members of Antifa and other extremist organizations, or not even extremist organizations, but extremist people trying to taint the name as well. Like I'm certain the same thing's happening for these guys. I've seen videos of people running out in front of cop horses and being trampled by them.
So I can say, if you want to like see 2 protests in a video clip, you watch the CNN video where it says mostly peaceful protest, as there's a 20-foot fire behind the guy. And that was the protest of 2020. And the protest of 2022, the trucker protest, you have a little kid dancing his little butt off, having a good time. I mean, I guess that's one way to put it. Like, you didn't see many kids at the protest in 2020, and everybody had their kids at 2022. Like, that's just the level, the difference in levels of violence and the way people were handling the situations. But the government response is night and day.
Right.
The government response in 2020 was nothing. And now it's so if you there's been videos coming out of cops shutting down coffee shops that served coffee to the truckers. There's videos of them going after gelato shops because they donated food and gave stuff to the truckers while they were there. If
Heard about them blocking the GoFundMe's and
yeah, the under the Wartime Measure Acts that the Canadian government's enacted, they can monitor all citizens' bank accounts, and they're trying to monitor their crypto accounts also. So they're trying to make like every crypto transaction goes through the Canadian government now. Like that's what they're trying to pass.
So Trudeau has been as prime minister for quite a bit. Like, when is their next election? Do they have an election, or like how? Like, when's the next?
Yeah, he just won re-election not too long ago, and I believe it's 6-year terms. So
they can recall him.
He can be recalled, yeah. But then at the end of the day, right? The simplest of steps is the Canadian government can just put up a referendum vote, right? Like, they can do it. The United States government can do it, right? You name a bill, name anything in Congress. Congress can literally just say, you know what, we're going to call for a referendum. They send it out to the states, and you as a voter go vote yes or no on the bill, and then it passes or fails exactly like that.
So, NJ, to answer your question, Trudeau was re-elected in 2021 on September 20th. And
So, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next.
Wow.
Dang it. I'm still trying to find the next election date.
I mean, or the government can go in there and say, hey, we're going to ease up on these mandates. We'll lift this and this, but still protect ourselves with this.
I think like even what Ethan was talking about is so important, because like if you as the elected officials, parliament members, cannot come to a decision, then shouldn't it be up to the people that you're representing to make that choice for you? Like, that just makes the most sense to me. Like, the same thing with, things that happen with the U.S. government. If we had more of a voice to vote yes and no on certain measures, like, I know it's not something that happens all the time, but, like, I feel like that would take out a lot of the divide and the blame, too, because you can see majority here feels that XYZ. And it sucks when it's so divided, but in this case, it's not divided. It seems like majority of Canadians support this protest, from what I've seen.
So the protest started as the Canadian government was really intervening, getting involved in truckers' day-to-day operations, right? So some of the numbers we've seen is that they're citing that 90% of truckers are already vaccinated, right? Like, it was all I think the protest started because the Canadian truckers said, we did everything you asked, we did everything we were told, and you've only added more restrictions. It's like, you asked us to go get vaccinated, we did it, and now you're trying to mandate it. And it's like, it has to stop with the trying to tell other people how to live their life at a certain point, because we saw the escalation from, hey, we're going to tell you how to run your business. Now we're telling you who you can do business with, in essence, of the coffee and gelato shops. And now they're trying to tell citizens where, oh, well, you gave money to a political organization that we don't like, so you can't have any of your money now. We're taking it all away. And we're going to freeze all your accounts. And like the police chief of Ottawa said, well, it doesn't matter if you leave the protest or not, we will still be filing sanctions against you, financial sanctions against you, and pursuing legal action if it takes, no matter how long it takes. So why would people stop protesting? Like, I see that only as a call for more protest.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're
going to protest harder.
Your authority here is like, wait, you think you have a lot more than what you have. Like, you're not going to hunt me down like an animal. Like, that's not okay.
Also, sorry, go ahead. I have an answer. I have an answer to your question, NJ, as to how long the Prime Minister serves, and this is per the wiki. The Prime Minister serves at Her Majesty's pleasure, meaning the post does not have a fixed term, and that once appointment and sworn in by the Governor General, the Prime Minister remains in office until they resign, are dismissed, or die. And that's based off of... Hold on, I just read it earlier. The House of Commons, and once the House of Commons picks a Governor General, then they pick the Prime Minister.
Cool. The more you know.
Yeah. Right?
I had to check 4 different websites for that because it just didn't seem right.
So one reason that we have to really pay attention to the situation, and everyone should keep it in mind, is because the convoys have started in the United States. We had one starting in Idaho, one starting in San Francisco, I believe, and another one starting in the Pacific Northwest. And they're all heading to D.C., where our government is putting up fences and preparing the Capitol again for protests. Mm-hmm. So 3 years straight almost now, we've had protests at the Capitol.
Damn.
Honestly, the situation is just probably going to get worse before it gets any better.
Well,
and it doesn't have to be, though.
Yeah, and also one thing to keep in mind is that hours before Trudeau enacted the martial law on wartime measures in Canada, he was on the phone with Joe Biden seeking advice on what to do. So...
hit him hard. Hit those son of bitches hard. I can already hear Joe Biden.
you gotta get them real good, Trudeau. Probably got his name.
You gotta get them to run their hands up and down your leg hairs. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
You know, after seeing him deal with this Russia-Ukraine situation, foreign diplomacy is so incredibly important, and Biden is not equipped for that. Trump wasn't equipped for it. Obama, not really.
Hold on. No, I can argue that one. I can argue that Trump was more equipped than Joe Biden and Obama.
Nobody liked Trump, and nobody took him seriously.
No. Yes, they did. Because just for the fact that Crimea, so Russia took Crimea in 2014 when Obama was president, right? That was the first invasion. Russia made no advances during Trump's administration. Also, the Abraham Accords weren't the best, but they were something. And I'm not saying he did a good job or whatever. I'm just saying if you look at his qualifications, he had personal business relationships with all of these other world leaders. Thus, he had, in essence, you would be barely equipped to deal with these people if you've dealt with them on a business measure, rather than Joe Biden, who had never really been out of the Senate. Even when he was vice president, you never heard of Joe Biden
going international.
Especially
You're right.
What Kamala Harris is doing. You could say she has more international experience in Biden's administration than Biden does himself.
She has to. That aside, likability factor, right? Biden, I feel is perceived as old and weak. Trump, lunatic. We have Obama, pushover. We had George before that. We all know how that happened.
Yeah.
And then, but you think back to Clinton, right? Clinton was so well liked, and we can say a lot of things about Clinton, but foreign diplomacy, I don't think we've seen that in administration in a very long time. So I think about, Joe Biden offering advice to Trudeau. I'm just why would you call him? We are dealing with, the worst media and PR of America than we have ever had in, the last, 15 years. Why would you trust our government to tell you how to do things when we can't even get a handle on our own shit?
He's the last person I fucking call.
It's sad.
Well, and everyone keeps bringing that up, right? Why is Joe Biden so fixated on Ukraine's borders when we have issues at our north and south border here in the States? It's In Canada, we had the ports and the borders shut down by Canadians. And coming from the southern border, we have a very large wave of migrants coming over the border. And it's like we
Not to
have a
mention-
lot. Yeah, we have a lot to deal with here before we worry about Ukraine's border.
The real problem is that avocados from Mexico might not be coming. That's the real problem because
Yeah.
those are the best avocados.
Well,
And
yeah,
all the
he already
cartels
signed the
control
order.
the
He shut it
land,
down.
dude.
Yeah,
I have to
so-
get them to California.
No, they
Canadian has showed up. Hi, Sammy.
Sammy, what's
So-
up, eh?
Hey, here you go. We can get a first-hand account on this subject.
I miss you,
Sammy, we were talking about the Canadian truckers. And we have to ask, do they actually have ground support there, or are we just disillusioned that this is something big going on? But no, fun fact, what was it? In 2021, they actually had like more avocados were illegally trafficked over the border than drugs, they believe.
Yeah.
Because the avocados were masking the drugs. The whole reason why this happened is because of the cartels. Like, it became such. They don't have much support at all.
Damn.
Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, the cartels all control a large portion of the avocado mining fields in Michoacan, and it's all gone to hell, man. All the
Yeah.
competitors against them were like, if they didn't fall in line, they'd be found hanged by the highway.
Yeah, that's intense. So we have this shit south of our border, north of our border. A lot's going on. Why would you call Joe Biden to say, "Hey, what should I do?" Please, what?
You know who you should
I
call?
can-
The priest. I'd say call the priest.
No.
I can just
Hang on,
say
here,
though,
Sammy.
on Joe Biden, I've just never seen somebody's approval rating drop so dramatically. Even George Bush did not have this big of a swing.
Mhm.
Either of them, and they both had, because George Bush Senior had the Persian Gulf War,
Hmm.
and then George Bush had the Afghani Gulf War, and so it's like,
Iraq, Afghanistan, and everything else
Fucking
after
everything,
that.
yeah.
So Sammy says, outside, like a certain group, most people are pissed that they closed down the bridge because it costs a lot of jobs to the auto plants in Windsor. The media is blowing this stuff up. Yeah, he's not fit. I don't think right now to hold office just by the way he talks. Yeah.
Age
It's
restrictions.
embarrassing.
I've been saying
So
it for
you've seen the
years.
clips.
so this was like the thing, right? Like when Trump was in office and everyone was impeaching him, that was the thing. Like, okay, we can impeach him, but you're just gonna put Pence in charge, and now it's like, oh, you're just gonna put Kamala in charge. I don't think that's a good idea from the progress she's made on the job she's been assigned, because she's in charge of the southern border and of the Ukraine crisis right now, and I don't see either of them getting better.
It's like, why do we
Thanks.
always have to pick like the better of two evils? Why can't we have a competent person who at least wants to make something better, other than just for their own pockets or constituents?
I think
Well,
like
Because
a
they
lot
get
of I think a lot of people who like get into these positions, aside from the select few that are just power hungry, I think they go in with like good intentions of being like, this is a problem and I want to see major change, and they kind of stand by their own convictions. At least I would hope so. But then when you get into these positions, like we see it in media, like portrayed in media, like TV shows, books, and movies, that it becomes a slippery slope because you have politics to deal with, and politics in general is just frustrating. You have to like rob Peter to pay Paul in one aspect while compromising here, doing this shady ass deal here to get what your overall wants or needs across. I couldn't do that job. It's just
See, I think we're suffering from what we had, like, so Jimmy Carter, right?
Mhm.
We can look back, as before all of our time, but we can look back as a historical point and focus. So Jimmy Carter was a changing of the guard president, right? Like generational change was happening at that time.
Mhm.
And we're clearly seeing generational change right now, and the boomers don't want to give up power. Like
Like, why
they
the fuck
understand they're on the
not?
way out. Yeah, like we look at it, and you say like Ted Cruz is Gen X, right? And what is he, 50 something?
Yeah, I'll find out.
Or so like his age group is what we would expect to be stepping up into the presidential positions, but we still see boomers hanging on with the only warm body they could get their hands on.
51. He's 51.
Yeah. So
Like, why don't you want to give up power? Is it because you think that we're gonna take too much away, or you just want things to stay the way that they are to line your own pockets? Like, come on. It
They
happened
want to
when
line their own pockets. That's literally all they care about.
fucking Nancy Pelosi over
So-
here, like, no, we should be allowed to trade stocks, and then tell her daughter to buy 50,000 God knows what and God knows where.
But so like
Right,
I
right,
suffer from a situation of I'm a millennial and my dad's a boomer and we run a business together. I completely understand what we're going through right now. If I try to introduce a digital time clock, he flips out and he needs to punch his time in like old school, and he doesn't understand anything about that. It still works, right?
But at the same time, the problem with the boomers is they have this very, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of like mentality, and they don't want to learn. They don't want to progress with technology. They don't want to do that. And that's not saying that your dad is like that at all, but
yeah, he is.
Okay, but like,
I mean, we
Okay,
didn't say
then,
it, you did.
but like in my experience, like with either working with them or like even my experience with my own family members, explaining something to them, they just like, oh, this is too complicated, like I just can't deal with it. And it's like, why are you just giving up on this? Aren't you a pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out type of fucking generation? We'll figure the fuck out.
There's a reason their parents were called the greatest generation, right? Like,
I don't know if you could hear my eyes roll, but they did.
yeah, and so to go, I know this is we're getting off topic, but to go back to numbers, right? On average, 50% of millennial men own some version of cryptocurrency. Women are about like 30 in the 30% range. So to millennials, cryptocurrencies are more or less mainstream everyday items. We don't buy stocks, we don't buy bonds, we don't buy gold, we buy Bitcoin, right? So the way we do business and the way that we spend our money is completely different than what the boomers built an economic system to revolve around. So that's why they're always blaming us for killing stuff, right? Like, oh, you killed Best Buy, or not Best Buy, but you killed Circuit City, and you killed Toys R Us. And it's like, well, yeah, because I can save money and order it online, right? Like, it's not my fault Toys R Us didn't build a better online store.
My mom.
You're killing the diamond industry when it's no. First of all, I don't want to buy blood diamonds. Second of all, we don't have the money.
I barely have the money
Our
for
avocado
this.
toast is too much.
Right. That was one thing. Like when I set out to buy Puzzled's engagement ring, I didn't want a main diamond. I didn't want to buy it.
Dude, I get it. Like instead of going to when I bought NJ's ring, instead of going to like jewelry shops, I looked on Etsy because I wanted to.
And my one request, my one request was like no diamond. Like get me a lab, whatever. Like that shit does not matter to me. It doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't matter to a lot of millennial women.
Well, I did have to have a natural stone, but
Yeah.
Not an
Starbucks?
ethically bought.
I was gonna say Starbucks.
No, I gotta pay where it came from, Russia.
What?
I learn new things every day.
Well, that wraps up another great episode. And don't forget to join our amazing and supportive community on Discord.
In our Discord, you can find game nights, watch parties, food picks, Dungeons and Dragons, and more. What's not to love about that? We have a little something for everyone. Head over to our website, officialmillennials.com, and you'll find more info, especially our featured Gamer of the Week.
Speaking of something for everyone, we have a book club. We read a book almost every month and talk through it together. We also have a special perk for our subs to discuss other books in a series called Chapter 2.
Don't forget to swing by YouTube and drop us a follow at Official Millennials. You can also find us on Twitter at MillsOfficial. We appreciate all the support, and y'all have a good one.
This is an Official Millennials production.